I think maybe we should also mention that right now, the funeral procession of a man, a 42-year-old man called Hanania Blonka, is underway. And people can go on Twitter and see very moving images of his funeral. There are thousands and thousands of people in this massive funeral procession that his family called on. When his body was found or brought back from Gaza yesterday, he was taken hostage on October 7th. And his family asked all Israelis, the whole public, to come as a show of force to bring the hostages back instead of enlarging the war, to bring the hostages back. So that is a different sort of pressure that Netanyahu also faces from his own public, 64% of which are saying, bring the hostages back before you continue this war.
The Israeli military sirens have sounded for the first time in months as Hamas launched a missile attack on Tel Aviv. The IDF says 8 projectiles crossed into Israel after being launched from the southern Gazan city of Rafah. We can speak now to the journalist Noga Tarnopolsky, who was at the scene a bit earlier on. Good afternoon, Noga.
Good afternoon.
Just tell us what exactly you experienced. What did you see? What did you hear earlier?
Well, I happened to be on my way back to Jerusalem from Caesarea, and I was on the train in Tel Aviv when the siren sounded. Look, it sounds like air raid sirens, like it does in the World War II movies, and everything stops and everyone gets rattled and shaken, and you could hear these whizzes, in the air of the interceptions and major booms. So it's scary. What we're hearing here, on the one hand, is a lot of cynicism about how something like this could be happening way into the 8th month of this war. And on the other hand, there are explanations from the Israeli army that say that the deeper the army is going into the final Hamas strongholds, the more this terror group is trying to empty its final missile stocks into Israel as a final show of strength.
What do we know about damage and also injuries?
Well, there was some damage. A home in Herzliya, a very posh suburb of Tel Aviv, was hit. There were, by the way, also rocket launches into southern and northern Israel, where there were also a home in Metula was hit. A parking garage in the south in Kibbutz Saad was hit. So there was significant damage. I have not heard of any human injuries, but it's important to note that in the south and in the north, there are no people. The entire these two halves of the country have been emptied. And Herzliya, it was simply a matter of luck because a rocket hit literally on the wall of a bedroom of a home, and it just so happened no one was there.
What are we to read into the timing of this attack? It is the first on Tel Aviv for almost 4 months. What's the significance of that?
Well, I see it as another show of strength from Hamas, showing we can do what we want and we can do it from wherever we want in Gaza. I think it's important to remember in recent days, the rockets and the missiles launched from Gaza were launched mostly from the northern Gaza Strip, and these were launched from Rafah, the specific area where the International Court of Justice ordered Israel last week to stop its operation, and where Israel appears to have limited its operation in response. So it has not stopped the fighting, but it has withdrawn some of the units that were serving there. And I think this is Hamas saying, we can do it. We're still here.
Do you think because of this rocket attack, that will then put pressure on Netanyahu, certainly from those further towards the right within his coalition, to not actually limit his operations in Rafah anymore, to ramp them up?
Well, absolutely. But that pressure exists every single day, with or without rocket launches from Gaza. Netanyahu, I'd say a majority of his cabinet, and possibly him as well, really are pushing for completely ignoring both the statements by the International Court of Justice and, more importantly, perhaps, by America and Israel's top allies in Europe, who are saying, be very careful in Rafah, do not engage in a full-blown operation. And they are pushing to ignore it. For now, Netanyahu appears to be somehow wavering, possibly kind of giving a tacit okay for a larger operation, but not actually calling it a full-blown military invasion of Rafah. But it's this pressure on him exists every day. I think maybe we should also mention that right now the funeral procession of a 42-year-old man called Hanania Blonka is underway, and people can go on Twitter and see very moving images of his funeral. There are thousands and thousands of people in this massive funeral procession that his family called on. When his body was found or brought back from Gaza yesterday, he was taken hostage on October 7th. And his family asked all Israelis, the whole public, to come as a show of force to bring the hostages back instead of enlarging the war, to bring the hostages back. So that is a different sort of pressure that Netanyahu also faces from his own public, 64% of which are saying, bring the hostages back before you continue this war.
Noga, we always appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. It's Noga
Thank you.
Tarnopolsky there, journalist in Tel Aviv.